You're doing everything right, but your baby is still fussy after feeds, still unsettled, still not sleeping the way you expected. Here's the thing. Most feeding mistakes aren't made by careless parents. They're made by careful ones. Following advice that sounds completely logical, but quietly works against your baby's biology. In this video, we're going through 10 of the most common ones, the ones hiding inside the routines you already have. Quick note, this is educational content, not medical advice. For any real concerns about feeding or weight gain, your pediatrician is always the right call. One of these is already in your routine and is a huge mistake. You just don't know which one yet. Mistake 1. Feeding by the clock before your supply is established. You set the 2-hour timer. You are being diligent. Here's what almost no one tells you. In the first 4 to 6 weeks, feeding strictly by the clock can work directly against your milk supply. Breast milk runs on supply and demand. The hormone prolactin, the one that drives milk production, rises in response to frequent, effective removal of milk from the breast. Space out the feeds, and you space out the signal. Newborns have very small, comfortable feeding volumes at birth. They're designed for small, frequent feeds, not because they're fussy, but because that's the biology. So when your baby roots around at an hour 40 and you're waiting for the timer, that's not your baby being difficult. That's your baby managing your supply. Let them. Mistake 2. Stopping a feed because the clock says so. 10 minutes per side, 15 minutes total. You've heard a version of this. The problem is that a feed isn't measured in minutes. It's measured in milk transfer. Breast milk changes across a single feed. The milk at the start is higher in water content and lower in fat. As the breast empties, the milk gradually becomes richer and more caloric, more satisfying. That shift is gradual, not a clean switch. And how quickly it happens depends on how full the breast was and how efficiently your baby is feeding, not on how many minutes have passed. A baby pulled off at 10 minutes may not have reached the most calorie-dense part of the feed yet. Watch your baby, not the clock. A baby who is finished will come off on their own, look relaxed, and stop swallowing. That's the signal. The timer is not. Mistake 3. Switching sides too early. This follows directly from mistake 2, and most parents never connect them. If you switch before the first breast is well drained, your baby gets the lower fat early milk from both sides without reaching the richer milk on either. 2 partial feeds instead of 1 complete one. The result is sometimes a baby who feeds frequently, seems hungry again quickly, and produces loose, green, frothy stools, which then gets Googled at 2 a.m. and sends everyone into a spiral. This is the part most parents miss. That pattern is often a feeding management issue. Not a supply problem, not an allergy, not something wrong with your milk. Though it's always worth a conversation with a lactation consultant to be sure. Finish the first side. Let your baby tell you when they're ready for the second. Mistake 4. Assuming a feeding baby is an eating baby. This one is subtle, and it matters. Babies suck in 2 distinct ways. Nutritive sucking, the deep, rhythmic draw that actually transfers milk, and non-nutritive sucking, shallower, faster, primarily for comfort and self-regulation. You can learn to spot the difference. Nutritive sucking involves a visible jaw drop on each suck, with an audible swallow every 1 to 3 sucks when milk is actively flowing. Non-nutritive sucking is faster and fluttery, with little to no swallowing. A baby who has shifted to non-nutritive sucking is no longer eating. They may be comfort nursing, which is valid and serves real biological purposes. But if you're logging that as 25 minutes of active feeding, you're working with the wrong number. That's not a problem to fix. That's information to have. Mistake 5. Burping too hard. The firm back pat. The confident circular rub. Every relative who has ever held your baby has done this with full conviction. Here's the science. The valve between your baby's esophagus and stomach, the lower esophageal sphincter, is immature in newborns. That's why they spit up. Vigorous patting increases abdominal pressure and can push milk back up rather than help air escape. A slow, gentle circular rub with your baby held upright against your chest is more effective and far less likely to produce the dramatic spit-up that everyone then mistakes for something serious. And here's what most parents don't know. Not every baby needs to burp after every feed. If you've held your baby upright for 5 quiet minutes and nothing has come, you haven't failed. You've finished. Mistake 6. Feeding. Your baby fed 40 minutes ago. They're crying. You feed them again. Sometimes that's exactly right. Newborns cluster feed, especially in the evenings, and returning to the breast frequently is completely normal. But crying after a feed is not always hunger. In the first few months, crying is your baby's only tool for communicating everything. Overstimulation, discomfort, temperature, the need for movement, the need to be held differently. Feeding in response to every post-feed cry can sometimes introduce more air and more volume into a system that was asking for something else entirely. Before feeding again within the hour, run through the short list. Diaper, temperature, position, movement. Sometimes the answer is a walk around the room, not another feed. Trust those cues, but learn to read the whole library, not just the one page. Mistake 7. Waiting for the cry to start a feed. This is the flip side of mistake 6. Both are true at the same time. Crying is a late hunger cue. By the time your baby is crying, they've already moved through several earlier, quieter signals you could have responded to first. Early hunger cues look like this. Rooting, turning the head and opening the mouth. Stirring from light sleep. Hands moving toward the mouth. Small fussing sounds before distress sets in. A baby fed on early cues latches more easily, feeds more calmly, and transfers milk more efficiently than a baby who has worked themselves into a full cry and now needs to be settled before they can even latch properly. Don't wait for the cry. The cry is the last message, not the first. Mistake 8. Treating the bottle as a target. Formula-fed and bottle-fed parents get a different version of the same mistake. The mistake is reading the ounces marked on the bottle as something to finish rather than a guide. Here's what almost no one tells you. Bottle feeding can make it harder for a baby to self-regulate intake. At the breast, a baby controls the flow naturally. With a bottle, especially one with a faster nipple, milk arrives faster than the baby's fullness signals can catch up. The AAP recommends responsive feeding, following your baby's hunger and fullness cues rather than encouraging them to finish the container. That means pausing mid-feed, watching for slowdown cues, and not nudging that last half-ounce in. A baby who drains every bottle and then seems uncomfortable isn't always asking for more. Sometimes they're telling you the bottle moved faster than they could manage. Mistake 9. Treating skin-to-skin as a newborn-only thing. Most parents think of skin-to-skin as the first hour, maybe the first few days, and then you move on. The research says something more interesting. Skin-to-skin during feeds helps regulate your baby's temperature, heart rate, and breathing. It also supports the release of oxytocin, the hormone that drives milk letdown. When you're calm, connected, oxytocin flows more readily. When you're tense or anxious, the stress response can interfere with that release, making letdown less efficient, particularly in the early weeks before it's well established. You don't have to be shirtless. Skin on the back of their hand, their cheek against your bare arm during a bottle feed. The biological conversation happening between your body and your babies during a feed is bigger than the milk itself. Don't close that channel before you need to. Mistake 10. Measuring success in ounces. This is the mistake underneath all the other mistakes. Ounces pumped, minutes fed, grams gained. It all goes in the app, and somewhere in all that measuring, the actual signal gets lost. A baby who is feeding well will typically produce 6 or more wet diapers in 24 hours after the first few days of life, gain weight along a consistent curve over time, appear settled between most feeds, and be alert during wakeful periods. Those are the markers, not the ounces, not the minutes on the timer. Here's what most parents miss. the anxiety around tracking can make feeding harder. Stress interferes with the hormonal release that supports letdown. A tense, clock-watching feed is physiologically different from a calm one, and your baby's body responds to that difference. The most counterintuitive feeding advice, and the most supported by the underlying biology, is this. When feeding isn't going well, put the tracker down. Sit somewhere quiet. Hold your baby for a few minutes before trying again. That's not giving up. That's your body and your baby's body remembering how to talk to each other. So the next time a feed doesn't go the way you planned, the latch was off, the timing felt wrong, they seemed unsettled after. You're not seeing failure. You're seeing the most complex nutritional exchange in human biology, running on a system that is only weeks old. Most of these mistakes aren't mistakes because you were careless. They're mistakes because the advice you were given was built for convenience, not for your baby's biology. Your baby already knows how to feed. They were born knowing. Your job, harder than it sounds, is mostly to get out of the way and learn to read what they're already telling you. If this changed how you'll approach the next feed, share it with a parent who's been staring at that app a little too hard. And if you want to understand more of what your baby is already doing, subscribe to the channel.